Hello, and welcome to PCB Chat, where we talk with experts across the printed circuit design, manufacturing, and electronic supply chain fields. I'm Mike Buetow, president of PCEA. My guests today are David Bow, PhD, who is the director of new product development at Metallic Resources. He is joined by Erik Ozan, the senior manager and head of the recycling division, and Jeff Giles, the sales manager of Metallic Resources. Metallic Resources is a developer of high-purity solder for electronics applications. Among their products are bar, paste, and cord wire. Metallic Resources' slogan is "Not your typical solder," and one big reason for that is the high-purity solder you supply. This is credited to your electrolytic refining process. What can you tell us about that technology?
This is Jeff Giles. The technology is really sort of proprietary, but it does provide us with a cleaner, more pure solder, and we accomplish that by using scrap materials, and that goes into our recycling process. But so all of our raw material comes from recycled tin, scrap, board, stuff like that, and we use our electrolytic process to purify metals that we turn into our finished goods that we send out, raw materials we send out to our customers. The reason that it's better is that customers can save money on manufacturing costs and making a better product. It's more pure to start with, so they end up with better solder joints, stronger solder joints.
So it's more pure to start with, even though it's coming from scrap material. And Metallic Resources is probably unique, at least among electronic solder suppliers, insofar as using only scrap material, not virgin.
Correct.
That's right.
And Mike, we're kind of proud of that. One of the reasons being at the global rate that we use resources throughout the world, and when you talk about virgin metals, we no longer dig the materials out of the ground. We rely on reusing, recycling, and that's kind of a big push for us. We're proud of the fact that we do that, and that we can keep stuff from going into landfills and produce a better than product.
One of the advantages of the electrolytic refining, besides the economics, and that we're only using recycled materials, is the purity that comes out because of the plating process. So depending on what alloy we're using, it's either a pure tin or pure tin and lead, because that's what is plating over onto the cathode metal at the molecular level. And the contaminants drop down to the bottom of the tank, which are then recycled as other products outside of the electronic industry.
Metallic Resources was founded in 1979. Was using reclaimed materials always part of your business model, or is that something that came about over time? Because sustainability back in 79 really wasn't a big thing in our industry.
Right. Well, I can tell you this. I started in 1986, and at that time they were doing electrolytic refining. They started out, there were three partners, and they started out actually outside of the electronic industry buying scrap metal or scrap tin and lead from transmission shops that were using it. It was being created as a scrap material. They quickly learned that the electronic industry was a better place to chase this material. But in 1986, they were plating. They were electrolytically plating and creating a solder. Back then, nobody wanted to hear about a recycled solder. The code words were virgin, 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 even though electrolytic refining is a better product. But since then, we've all grown and learned, and we all know that it's better than digging it out of the ground and keeping the environment clean.
To my knowledge, all bulk solder companies offer some form of dross recycling, but you have what you call this custom designed recycling program. So let's talk about that. Okay. As I understand it, there are also different types of materials that you're able to recycle, including printed circuit boards, right? Insulated wires, lead wires, and so on. So we're not just talking about the solder pots and the kilograms worth of dross that gets shipped up to your plant.
So we're really a recycler for the electronic industry. Now we're a solder refiner, but we also recycle other materials. We deal with other refiners on these other materials, but we take them and we customize our recycling program for the customer. So depending on what they're looking to get recycled. Now there's many items in the electronic industry that we're taking, such as PC board trim, lead wires, solder paste, tubes and wipes, copper scrap, aluminum scrap, but most of these many of these are going to other refiners. But the advantage in dealing with us is that we'll take 25 pounds of this, 20 pounds of that, 50 pounds of this, which is often the case in the electronic industry, that they're generating more of the solder scrap items, but they also have these other items. And it wouldn't be convenient for them to deal with all these different recyclers.
I'm going to take a brief break to mention our sponsor. This episode of PCB Chat is sponsored by PCB East, the electronics industry's East Coast conference and trade show. Coming to the Boston suburbs May 9 to 12. Registration is now open at pcbeast.com. Getting back to the recycling, many novel ways have been proposed of late to reclaim metals from PCBs. One of the big issues is the amounts of the high-value metals like gold, palladium, silver. They just aren't sufficient to bother with. While the higher content metals like tin are relatively so cheap, it's more efficient just to buy that on the wholesale market. So what's your secret?
Are you talking about from the printed circuit boards, or are you talking about from the solder scrap?
I'm talking about from the printed circuit boards.
Well, most of these items are not profitable for us to do. They're our lost leaders, essentially. The printed circuit boards typically have about 18 to 20% copper, maybe 22% copper on them. And then these days, there's less and less gold and silver on there. It's really the copper that kind of makes the value of these materials, makes it worthwhile as a break-even point. We break these materials up we sort these materials based on what they are. So we sort them as high-grade printed circuit boards, medium-grade printed circuit boards, low-grade printed circuit boards, PC board trim. Those are and bare boards. Those are the items that we sort it by, and we pay accordingly on each one. So in our industry, we don't see a lot of high-grade printed circuit boards. It's more so like motherboards or very rich gold. But today they're plating much less gold on the printed circuit board. So what defines a medium-grade printed circuit board is either there's gold on it or there's processing chips, and that holds the value. Those items we're paying for a medium-grade printed circuit board. A low-grade printed circuit board won't have any processing chips, won't have any gold on it, and we'll pay a nominal amount for that. But we'll pay something. And then you get down to the printed circuit board trim, and it's basically we don't charge, we don't pay for, we take them and get them recycled. And it's kind of a break-even wash.
How are those products sent to you? Do you have longstanding customers who ship their scrap, or is this part of take back programs, that are run through big OEMs, or a combination of all of the above?
We're dealing with the electronic industry directly, so we're dealing with the assemblers and the fabricators. That's our customer base, and those are the ones we're servicing. So we will take that material in when we take in a shipment with the solder dross. That's part of what makes it economical for freight, is they'll ship it with, let's say, 300 pounds, 500 pounds of solder dross or solder scrap, which is heavy and dense and moves relatively cheaply. And then the electronic scrap they can put it into boxes, They can put it in drums, whatever is convenient for them to send it. I mean, most of it ends up coming in boxes, to be honest with you. And then we get the boxes recycled too, because we're dealing with cardboard recyclers.
Will you take just bare boards, or will you take boards that have parts on them?
We'll take both, as long as we're getting the solder scrap.
And so, as part of that process, do you end up scraping metals off the board, or would you heat everything up and separate it that way? Or, what can you tell me about that?
We're actually not doing the refining on those materials. We're sending those to recyclers to refiners who do that. So basically they will shred the boards and then retrieve the metals from the board. And when we ship those out, we're shipping them in truckload volumes. So our customers may be sending us 100 pounds or 200 pounds of this and 50 pounds of that. When we send it out, we're sending it 30,000 pounds at a time.
Now, North America was the last bastion for leaded solders, and my understanding is that the SAC and the high tin solder compositions have completely overtaken eutectic tin lead for solder paste. Even the military primes seem headed that way if they're not there already. The next generation of lead-free alloys coming out has an emphasis on reliability, temperature, cost. Is that consistent with what you're seeing?
Yes. Actually, right now, North America, we still have a big portion of tin lead users, but overseas, most of the other countries, they are going to the lead free. So the newer alloy is coming, but it still have some like a concern, a reliability concern, those kind of things. But industry IPC has some standard that like an lead free, mostly like tin copper and a SAC alloy, which is tin, copper, and silver.
And then you offer a variety of solder paste. You have your own fluxes. You offer cord wire and so on.
Yes, we make our own. All the formulations, all the products as our own. We do the development, and also for bigger customers, we customize for them.
What does your in-house testing capability look like?
The testing, most of the like it's incoming, outcoming testing. It's a basically IPC standard testing. But the mechanical strength of those, we have to send it out. And some of the reliability testing, also we are sending out to the other testing lab.
For years, OEMs specified the solder. Then the EMS companies arrived on the scene, and in many instances, they took that over. Where does the ownership of the specification stand today? Is that in the hands of EMS companies for the most part, or OEMs still maintaining that?
I think it's both. It's a case to case. I think some of them, the OEM, they dictate, and the rest probably they have a lot of them has the flexibility.
And that has kind of transformed over the years. I mean, OEMs used to have a great deal of power when they would specify a product, and they would make their contractors go through testing and that sort of thing. But as the industry developed, the contract manufacturers have become more and more respected, and then they kind of they did push back a little, saying that we can't keep changing our pots for specific types of materials. That we've selected this one, it will give you all the testing parameters that we've gone through, and so you're right. I think contractors have a lot greater power now, and it saves money in the long run.
In your experience, do the design engineers influence the solder selection at all?
I think they do. Sure, they do, and some of the older guys, they've been around for a long time. They have preferences. It can be as abstract as liking Heinz ketchup over the
Yes. I think a lot of companies are wasting money for that reason. They stuck into like a high cost material, but they cannot change it because they qualifying process is very long and expensive.
Yeah, I do think that our industry tends to be very risk averse when it comes to processes.
There's a pro and con on that. Competing in a global market, if you are too rigid, you're not going to follow your. I think your when you're competing, you're going to lose the niche.
and most of the modern lead free alloys that are being used, the tin copper and tin copper with an additive, they've been out there long enough now, the 20 plus years, that they've proven that they have a high reliability and high strength value. I mean, over the years, just a known fact. So that's a contributor to that as well.
Yes, we educate our customers. A lot of times we help them. So we're not only solving their problem, also give them suggestions. For instance, we still see a lot of customers use SAC alloy, which is 3% silver, which is very high cost. But meantime, you can have a just tin copper with some additives. Works as good as the SAC. So we do that kind of uh, technical support as well.
I mean, I think a strong case could be made that just the transition from eutectic tin lead to SAC 305, SAC 406, and then a lot of the 99, the tin 99s and things like that. Um, what we effectively saw was an industry, it was pushed that direction, right? They didn't necessarily do it because they wanted to, but then they recognized once they got there and tried all these different flavors of solders that some of these alternatives performed better in certain applications than eutectic tin lead. That must have been pretty eye opening.
That's probably it's still debating. I think a lot of cases, reliability wise, or many applications, still you take tin lead is better. It's only environmental concern pushing that initially. So and now, of course, it's a industry trend is going to the lead free. So uh, if you take out the environmental concern, it just doesn't justify the lead free.
What have you done? What work have you done in terms of the lower temperature solders?
Low temperature solder is already there. It's bismuth containing. But the bismuth is especially bismuth and lead. If it's somehow externally if you mix into it, then it forms a very low temperature phase in the joint. That's a reliability concern. That's why initially when the lead free was considered, bismuth was taken out. But now a lot of, especially from Japan, Asia, they are pushing this bismuth containing alloy. I think industry gradually accepting it. Yeah, we are following it, but we are not pushing it too hard.
And on the sales side, it's a difficult issue because we have to weigh quantity of sales worth, a product that we sell. If it's going to be a small amount, customers, we don't have the uh, the push from customers for those kinds of things. I do know that Indium is working on some really fantastic stuff right now, but it's a great avenue to pursue, and eventually we'll get there. But for us, right now, we just don't have the customer base that's looking for that sort of material for us to really take that deep dive.
Understood. Have you, in the conversations you've had, have there been concerns that bismuth and some of these other elements, right? They don't necessarily produce that nice shiny joint that people have been used to for 50 or 60 years, and there may not be anything mechanically wrong with the joint, but it just doesn't look like what they're used to seeing. What kind of conversations have you had with customers about that? And what do you know about where the standards are headed insofar as inspection?
I think initially inspection did have this problem. All of the lead free, but that's already over. Industry already used to this kind of the shininess. Initially, when they do, that has because they used to that shininess of tin lead. But right now, the solder paste and the wave soldering, the joint looks pretty good, very close to tin lead. It's not just bismuth. Actually, the silver alloy, the same. The shininess is
Mm-hmm.
not there compared to tin lead. But bismuth actually wets better than SAC alloy. Um, but still, business concern is that the
The
reliability.
brittleness.
If
Yeah.
yeah, brittleness, and also somehow if you mix with lead, that's going to be a
Mm-hmm.
concern because on a 96-degree phase, that can be like a starting point of the joint start to
Right.
yeah,
You may end up in trouble out in the field.
yes, reliability issue.
Do you think design engineers are aware of that to the extent that they should be?
Initially, this is really thoroughly studied. But now the industry coming back, a newer generation of this, I think engineers not aware of the initial study. I think probably need to educate them more. Um, Otherwise, it can get into some reliability issues.
And I know you're based in Ohio, but do you serve every region?
Yes.
We do. We are a global company. We have global customers. We have sales representatives in all over the country. Um, we do provide global assistance, stuff like that. We have strategic, locally stocked distributors in different parts of the country, um, and that's U.S. and global. So we can always use better coverage, but we've got plenty of coverage.
Is your development all concentrated in Ohio, or is that spread out?
Yes, concentrated in
Hmm.
Ohio right now.
Got it. And I know you'll be exhibiting at PCB East in May. Where else can engineers find you?
We typically are at the Apex, which was just in San Diego, and then we do the SMTA, which has most recently been in Minneapolis. And we do those shows every year, so they can find us there. We put out feelers to let folks know what booth we're at, and we give away good stuff.
And your website is metallicresources.com.
That
Yes.
is correct.
Anything else you want to leave our listeners with?
I would like to say that we are for the Responsible Minerals Initiative. We're actually one of only there's a handful of what they call the conformant smelters, and there's only a handful. I think there's around 160 of conformant smelters around the globe for tin. We're talking about tin, and we're one of those. And out of the U.S., there's literally less than a handful of those guys. So we're one of those guys. Um, we're proud of that. We offer a solder analysis program for our customers, which if they're using our recycling business or if they're using our finished products, we offer a solder analysis program that we can test their pots or wave machines, select solder machines, and try to help them keep their production in spec and running at optimum. So we'll do that free of charge. We use an arc spark OES or optical emission spectrometer system, so it's one of the most accurate out there. So we're proud of that program.
And is that something that you need to send a technician or an apps engineer into a factory to do, or is that something that can be just installed and then detected remotely?
The customer will send in a sample, small plug. We provide everything for that program. We'll provide molds. We provide shipping envelopes and shipping cards. And typically, if a customer is 2 days away. Once we receive the sample, we can get the results back to them that same day via email, so that they can check their production lines and get it back in order, or know that it is in proper working order.
Is that quick enough for companies, especially ones that are in the Midwest, or sorry, in the U.S. that are doing a lot of high mix product? Is that frequent enough for them to be able to maintain that bath quality?
Yeah, I mean, it does depend on customer. We have many customers, and that program is just it works like gangbusters. We have many customers, that even customers that pay for the service, that maybe aren't buying material from us. But most companies are on a quarterly check. Depending on their customers, it may be it could be a weekly check. It just depends on the what products they might be making, and the specifications that they have to meet.
That is more than 300. I think nowadays probably even more, more than $300 worth of service, free, and they can send us as much as they want to, the sample.
Free is good.
Yeah.
Mike, one of the things that we pride ourselves on in this day of automated customer service, Metallic Resources, we work the old-fashioned way. We're a privately held, family-owned business, privately held. And when somebody calls in here, they get a real person, and we do everything we can to help them in any way we can. And that goes on both ends of the business, on the scrap end or on the finished products.
That alone, I think, is almost unique in this day and age, particularly here in the U.S. So I congratulate you on your commitment to that service.
And that could go a long ways. It's not only our customers. And this, as you know, this industry is, we all sort of know each other, and we work pretty hand in hand with our competitors as well. So many of our competitors might buy our base materials because of its purity to start their own products. So it's and we're happy to help where we can with those kinds of things.
Interesting. All these years I've been in this industry, and I did not know that. That's really interesting. Well, that brings us to the end of our podcast. I'd like to thank today's guests, David Boa, Erik Ozan, and Jeff Giles of Metallic Resources. For PCB Chat, this is Mike Buetow. Have a nice day.